Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, unamulwanji, namaste, jambo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast, an iHeartRadio Best Kids and Family Podcast Award nominee. We are so delighted and so very honored that you join us in our mission to help all families grow closer through reading. Please be sure to tell all of your family and friends about the show. Tell your kids' teachers, their librarians, their principal, and please be sure to subscribe to the show on the iHeartRadio app, on Audible, Amazon Music, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Good Pods, Podcast Addict, Ghana, Himalaya, wherever you find your podcasts. Before we invite our guests into the studio, we want to invite you to connect with us on social media. Facebook.com/readingwithyourkids, at Reading With Your Kids on Instagram and TikTok, and at Jedley Magic on Twitter. We would also love for you to visit our website, readingwithyourkids.com. We have an fantastic online magazine. It is called Reading with Your Kids. You're going to find some fantastic writing in the magazine, great author profiles, cooking with your kids, recipes, STEM activities you can do with your kids, find out what games you can play with your kids. So much there on the Reading with Your Kids online magazine, and it is free, and it is available at our website, readingwithyourkids.com. Join us right now from the beautiful state of North Carolina. Our guest is here today to celebrate her beautiful new book. It is called We Gather Together. Please welcome to the show, Denise Kiernan. Hey, Denise, how are you?
Hi, I'm great. How are you doing?
I'm wonderful. I can't wait to talk to you about this book. It is talking about one of my favorite holidays, Thanksgiving. Tell us all about it, please.
Yes, one of my favorite holidays as well, which was part of the impetus for wanting to write about it to this extent, which has been a great extent so far. So basically, years ago, I became interested in sort of the history of the U.S. Thanksgiving holiday and kind of gratitude in general, and the ways different cultures, different folks over time have come together to be thankful for something. And also knowing that there's a lot of mythology and a lot of it rather hurtful that is associated with our U.S. holiday that's not necessarily rooted in fact. I thought, well, let's look at how this holiday actually came to be. And it turned out to be a very long, interesting story. And at the heart of it, really, is this woman, widowed mother of 5 named Sarah Josepha Hale, who, despite having no formal education, went on to become one of the most influential editors in the 19th century. And at the helm of her magazine, The Lady's Book, went under a couple different names, but that's the name I'll use. It had a couple different incarnations. She would lobby for a single day, the same day every year, for the entire country to come together and celebrate Thanksgiving, because Thanksgivings have been around for a very long time and did not start in North America. So it was, and once it did come over into, colonial America, it was quite common for different colonies to celebrate Thanksgiving at different times. Some places had Thanksgiving more than once a year. It was usually decreed by a religious leader or someone serving in a municipal leader, a mayor of sorts. Could be coming from the, colonial governor at the time, or the governor once we get into the existence of the United States. And, Sarah Hale thought, well, wouldn't it be nice if we always did it on the same day and that everybody did it all together? Which seems simple enough, but it was not simple getting it done. So she begins petitioning, essentially, all these heads of state, I mean, people in other countries, people who were the heads of territories that weren't part of the United States yet, and eventually presidents, always asking the same thing, last Thursday of November, can we please all come together? That will be our national day of Thanksgiving. And it wasn't until the Civil War and Abraham Lincoln was the one who agreed to her. She had tried 5 presidents. He was the one who agreed to her request. And there we have the beginning of what seems familiar to us now as Thanksgiving, this end of November holiday that the entire country, comes together to celebrate at the same time. However, it wasn't a federal holiday. It was not an official holiday until World War II. And so I know that's the one that really, I thought, no, it had to have been before that, but it wasn't. So, every year the president would proclaim which day was going to be Thanksgiving. And then it just became routine. Everybody expected the president to declare, the last Thursday of November to be Thanksgiving. But that did run into a few snags in the late 30s and late 1930s. And so finally Congress made the move and we had an official federally mandated holiday put on the books. There's a lot that went into all that. So that's hardly a nutshell, but that's the overarching story. Yeah.
Well, this is fascinating. We recently had another guest on who also, talked about Lincoln being the first one to, recognize it as a federal holiday. It just blows out of the water. Everything that most of us have learned is, the Pilgrims landed. They had a tough winter. The Indians helped them out. Next year they said,
everybody
come on
friends.
over. Let's have a party. Yeah. And ever since then, we've been celebrating it. And, wow, not until World War II did it become
official.
Yeah.
So, and it's, there had been, George Washington was actually the first president of the United States to proclaim a national day of Thanksgiving. But it was not an annual, it was just not an annual holiday. And yeah, you mentioned the Pilgrims all the way up from Lincoln up through, FDR, up through, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. In presidential proclamations, presidents still issue Thanksgiving proclamations to this day, every year. You can find them. They've been, National Archives has them. You can read them all. It's fascinating stuff. If you're a nerd like me, it's fascinating stuff. So I'm going to read some presidential proclamations today. Woo! Nobody before FDR ever mentioned Pilgrims in any of these proclamations.
Wow.
Never mentioned. No. Yeah. So one of the things that's interesting that I looked into is sort of how, to the extent that I could, how they kind of became part of the, what I will call lore, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this is really fascinating. I mean, talk about mind blown here. I mean, I'm almost 100 years old and I'm hearing this for the first time. There's so much to delve into, but before we go any deeper, I'm, curious. It's people always wonder how people name their song or give a book a title. A lot of people are surprised when they find out, well, the author didn't give that book a title. It was an editor.
Sure, that happens.
Publisher.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you chose the title "We Gather Together" as opposed to how Thanksgiving came to be. Why did you choose that title?
Because there is a part of at the beginning of the book and also at the end, I do sort of look at gratitude as a global practice, which it is and always has been as long as humans have walked the earth. And there has been a lot of research done, especially in the 21st century, about the benefits of a gratitude practice. Mental, emotional, physical, and this is all incredibly well documented. It's not just, some sort of, it'll make you feel better. There's some hard scientific research backing this up now. And so I liked the idea of people coming together. And that was a phrase that Sarah Hale would use a lot when she was writing about this holiday in her magazine or writing various presidents or leaders of different communities about bringing people together. And now we have proof, so many years later, that coming together, especially during times of great stress, gratitude is even more powerful when it is invoked at a time of real crisis. And one of the things that really fascinated me about when the what I'll call the American Thanksgiving tradition really took off was it was in the middle of the Civil War when a lot of people weren't getting along. And then, when did it become, an actual federal holiday? During World War II, during World War II. So we have these incredibly difficult times in human history, and those crises can be linked to folks coming together to find something to be thankful for. And so I really liked that idea of unity. And it does remind me of that song that you and I have discussed before, which actually has nothing to do with Thanksgiving. But it did remind me of that. But it was the idea of gathering together that which is a very simple act and doesn't have to involve presents or fancy meals or anything. But yeah.
One of the things that we've celebrated here on the podcast since we launched back in 2017 is this idea of helping our kids live gratefully, helping them understand that when we choose to live gratefully, there are so many benefits. I've been a big advocate. I was one of those really annoying people who are, the half glass full people. And I've people in my life who are like, going, yeah, I know you're going to tell me we're going to make this better, but I don't want to hear that.
Yeah, silver lining, whatever.
Yeah, I don't want to hear it right now. I just want to be miserable for a moment. And okay. But it is amazing that, science has proven that when you live gratefully, you're healthier, you're happier, you're able to endure pain longer. And that
pain tolerance, blood pressure, everything. Yeah.
And that makes sense. Here we are. We're just you're talking about the fact that Lincoln, made it official for the first time during the Civil War, and it became a recognized holiday during the Second World War, times when our nation was enduring this great pain. I guess now in hindsight, it makes perfect sense that's, when these leaders said, we really need this. We need to come together as a country and be grateful. It's a really bad time right now, but we need to be grateful for the wonderful things we do have in our lives.
Yeah. Yeah. So when Lincoln agreed with Hale, it was a huge, huge step. And then I think, in World War II, it was finally, we've done this for years now. We don't want to lose this. Let's set this in federally mandated stone when this is going to be.
Yeah.
And I love the idea. One of the things that's great about the podcast is that, it is such a good message that can constantly be, it can't be restated enough. Trying to teach, and it's hard to pass on to young folks, to live gratefully, especially the ones who had to, were going through school during COVID. Kids see some horrible stuff. So, that's one of the reasons why when I originally did the adult book, We Gather Together, I wanted to do Thanksgiving books for other age groups because it's such an important message. So there's the Giving Thanks picture book. That really is just about, it tells a bit about how, Hale started Thanksgiving, but it also just talks about, what are you thankful for? And then, adapting for young readers, the young readers edition, which is, the book that just came out. It's important to give kids the right story when they're young. Then we don't have to keep, every year you see these, hey, this isn't the true story about Thanksgiving. The reason we have to keep writing those stories is we keep telling kids the wrong story. And so they keep growing up to be adults who eventually have to find out, oh, that's not exactly how it happened. So, yeah.
Well, I'm the only this isn't the true stories that I've seen. I see them every year. It's like it involves indigenous people. Yeah. And, it's like I absolutely agree. There's been so many injustices that have happened to folks who are indigenous. I'm really bummed out that we can't celebrate this holiday. And maybe if we get the real story out there, we can separate that myth from the reality. And, I want to address the wrongs that happened to the indigenous people.
Yes.
But at the same time, let's also find a way to be thankful. I don't think we have to have one or the other. I think we can have both.
I think part of what made me, it was like, I want to feel good about liking Thanksgiving. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the fact of the matter is there's a really wonderful, fascinating, true story that is out there, that exists, and it doesn't have to, and at the end of the, towards the end of the book, I do look at how, that myth began to, just perpetually gain steam, and how some people actually did try and, reverse it. There were different attempts at different points in history in the 1970s and late 60s where people were coming out, there were protests and like, we can't keep talking about how, great the arrival of the Europeans was for people who were already here for thousands and thousands of years and have their own, thankfulness ceremonies, as all cultures do. So yeah, there is the idea of having a day of gratitude or a rite or some sort of ceremony, to celebrate gratitude or to come together to be thankful is not unique. It's not American. It's not, this is the way it has always been. So let's kind of latch on to that and let's, look at, now no history is perfect. Let's look at the actual history and, then we can, then it just, it just feels more authentic.
Yeah. Yeah.
Aside from less hurtful and exploitive of indigenous people, it just feels more authentic.
Yeah, absolutely. As you're talking and as we're acknowledging that there are Thanksgivings. I know there's a Canadian Thanksgiving and there are thankfulness rituals and celebrations all around the world. I think we should celebrate them all. That way we can be thankful like every
day of the year, practically.
Every day of the year. Yeah, that would be awesome.
Right. Well, one of the things that I found really interesting that I get into in the book is you can see how Thanksgiving changed over the years. How the celebration changed, when parades suddenly started appearing, when football started to become associated with it. You can see all of these things. And I found that to be encouraging because it shows that the holiday itself has evolved. Mm-hmm. Well, it can evolve again.
Sure.
Like we can help it evolve again. We can move it away from, what I would call the little fanciful, nonsensical story I was told as a kid. And we can move away from that and move toward whatever we want, what do we want our thankfulness practice to look like in this country? And there's some neat things that have happened over the last, Giving Tuesday and, there are lots of charitable things that are now associated with Thanksgiving and people have Friendsgiving. People, it's about finding your family or being with the family you were born into, whatever, it's all about, again, just being true to yourself and finding a way to celebrate that gratitude with people you care about.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm an especially big fan of Friendsgiving. My waistline probably isn't a big fan of having another excuse to eat a ton, but I love that. I love that. I'll be honest with you. I'm not a huge fan of the pictures we see on the front pages of newspapers every year of the politicians and the religious leaders going in and feeding folks in homeless shelters, because it's just a photo op.
Yep.
As you know, and I know that there are people. My wife and I ran a ministry that served folks at a homeless shelter year round.
Yeah.
And and it's if people would see those pictures and then be motivated to go out and work year round to help folks who are homeless, I'd be all in favor. But it doesn't seem to work that way.
There's not a huge uptick in the volunteer. After the holiday. There's so many different things that have taken hold around the holiday, and it really is interesting to see the progression, progression, the movement, the evolution of the holiday over time, and how we think of it, today.
One of the things, this is going to sound really silly, but I really love the fact that Sarah Hale was able to do this without any real formal education. She didn't have to go into huge debt to make Thanksgiving happen.
And this, this is reading with your kids. Well, I mean, she didn't have a formal education, but her parents filled that house with books. Mm-hmm. And she she was taught to read by her parents. Her brother, who did get to go to school, when he would, come back, he basically gave her a second, his education passed on to her. But I mean, she talked about when she wrote later in life, she would usually write something kind of biographical, sometimes in the magazine or sometimes in the, back of she published a number of books. And, she just talks about her love of books, and that's one of the things that brought her and her husband together, who she lost quite young, unfortunately. But, just the impact that books and reading had on her life.
Yeah. Yeah.
And ended up having an effect on all of our lives too.
Absolutely. That's wonderful. Hey, I'm wondering, Denise, is there a favorite Thanksgiving tradition of yours that you'd like to share with us?
One of the things that we try to do every year is we have this on Saturday after Thanksgiving, we have a drop-in. And so there's a bunch of leftovers, and it's very informal because, a lot of times people have a lot of very, set plans for the actual day of Thanksgiving. So we get our tree, for Christmas. Ooh. And it's a tree. It's like a drop-in tree trimming, leftover eating. I call it Tryptophantasia. And, it's really lovely because we usually get to see a lot of folks, maybe neighbors, it's really nice. I like it.
I like that, Tryptophantasia.
Yeah.
I might steal that.
Oh, you can steal it. Give me a little credit.
All right.
Yeah.
I love that.
I know. Now I feel like I should go buy tryptophantasia.com or something.
Yeah, well, do it quickly. There'll be a few days. We here in my home, we love Thanksgiving. We've hosted international kids in our home, and one of the things that was wonderful is when those kids, they would stay here with us when they're in high school. When they go off to college, they would come back. And so every Thanksgiving, we would have 25, 30 people crowded around our little collection of tables because we didn't have one big enough. And there was one particular Thanksgiving where we had 6 languages going on at the table at the same time, which was absolutely incredible. And it just filled my heart with joy.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah. Denise, we can, I think we can talk about Thanksgiving and all the wonderful things that we've been blessed with forever, but we should take some time and let everybody know where they can go to find out more, not only about this version of We Gather Together, but the adult version and also the picture book, and also find out more about you.
the best place is DeniseKiernan.com. DeniseKiernan.com.
We've had a great time speaking to the author of We Gather Together. Beautiful book from our guest, Denise Kiernan. Denise, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you, Jed.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast and will join us for the next exciting episode of the show. We are so grateful that you're part of our beautiful Reading with Your Kids family. We'd love for you to connect with us on social media, facebook.com/readingwithyourkids, at Reading with Your Kids on Instagram, at Jedley Magic on Twitter. If you are on LinkedIn, please connect with Jed Doherty. We also have a Reading with Your Kids page on LinkedIn. We would love for you to visit our website, readingwithyourkids.com. Authors, click on the Authors Click Here button to find out how you can be a guest here on the show and find out how we can help you celebrate your book with the world. And also, parents, please be sure to visit readingwithyourkids.com to download our free online magazine. Hey, we want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, we want to start by thanking our amazing guest. I also want to thank my team, Fatima Khan, Rory Grady, Chris Doherty, Ann O'Leary, Soji Franklin. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And thank you so much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.
What?